Hello friends, followers and channel members, welcome to another video here in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, and in today's video I'm going to try and address something which is a bone of contention and causes a great amount of frustration for lots of pilots here in the simulator. Many of you over several months have contacted me about this problem and also mentioned it when we've been flying on our live streams, so hopefully today we're going to have a look at fixing an issue which, as much as I like to blame on the simulator, sadly is usually down to pilot error. So let's just go ahead and set the scene. You've done a beautiful flight from your destination. You're now on short finals here, ready to come in and land, and you're all lined up perfectly for that amazing touchdown and that great landing which you've been striving for and looking forward to since the moment you departed. The moment of truth arrives, you're all lined up, ready to touch down, crossing the threshold, bang on that center line, and just as the main landing gear wheels touch down, suddenly everything starts to go wrong. We're now skidding left, right, all over the runway, really struggling to hold that center line, and yeah, it's basically gone all wrong at the last minute. Why is that? Is that a problem with the simulator? Is that a problem with the aircraft? Sadly, I'm here today to tell you that most likely it's down to pilot error. But in this video, we're going to look at how we can mitigate this, and also rest assured, it is not just you guys. Even the pros have issues sometimes too. So let's rewatch that approach from a slightly different camera angle. Now obviously I'm using a replay mod to be able to do this, so please ignore any of the alarm systems or anything that you can see on the screen. That is not what is important here. What's important is I'm going to pause the video in a moment just as we are about to touch down there. So okay, how does that picture look to you guys? Maybe drop a comment down below on this pause screen. Tell me what you think is good or what is bad with this picture. At first glance, this looks pretty nailed on. We're right on the center line, we're in the touchdown zone. Realistically, nothing should go wrong. We'll ease off on the thrust, close the throttle, and then we'll just be able to roll out nicely on the center line. Yes? Alright, let's now have a look at the aircraft from the outside, something of course we have the beauty of being able to do here in a simulator. And if I keep this paused frame and we just start rolling the camera angle around, just have a look at the direction that the aircraft is actually pointing when we move the camera and face it directly behind the aircraft. We can see we are facing nowhere near the right direction for touching down. As soon as we touch down, our wheels obviously aren't going to turn, they're going to be traveling in a nice straight line. Which direction is that aircraft going to shoot off in at 100 miles an hour? It's not the direction that we want. This is because we have not decrabbed the aircraft correctly. But going back to that first picture when we're inside the cockpit, there didn't look to be that much wrong, did there? And you can be forgiven for thinking exactly that. Even more so because airlines have found that pilots on occasion sometimes struggle to get that overall perception of what they think is their aircraft straight nailed on down the runway. Some airlines were then finding that because of this, it meant that some serious decrabbing on the runway was taking place, which caused some structural issues, and of course then repairs has to be made, pushing up the bills, not something that airlines want. So extra training then was brought in for pilots, not because they were bad pilots, but just to give them a better overall situational awareness of the picture that they got as they're touching down. And that's what I'm going to attempt to try and show you now here in this video. Of course, arguably, it's even more difficult for a simulator pilot with a 2D screen sat at the desktop because you don't have any visual perceptions or peripheral vision to assist you. So it's even more important that we try and use the little tips that we're going to show you. So let's just have a look at this landing again. Now, most of the time, by this point in the landing, you're just going to be looking straight outside the window. You might keep a little eye on the private flight display, see what the ILS is looking like and things with the glide slope, but most of the time you are going to be just looking out the window to make sure you nail that center line and nail the touchdown zone, which is where you lose perception sometimes of the direction your aircraft is heading in. Now I'm going to pause the video again in a moment, and I want to direct your attention to the navigation display. Now, because I'm using a replay mod, it's not showing exactly as it would do in a live approach, but I'll visit that in a moment. All you need to be aware of is that I've currently got a track shown on the navigation display, and that is the runway track. Now have a little look at the direction the aircraft is traveling in. This is indicated by this little yellow marker. The idea when we land is, of course, the aircraft should be traveling in the same direction as the runway track. That means we're going to be nice and straight on the runway. We're not going to be shooting off to one side and then struggling to maintain that center line as you saw earlier on in the video. So pilots have been trained to keep the navigation display in their scan as they're coming into land, so they can see that they are actually aligned correctly up with the runway track. Because we've already seen that just looking out the window can give a false impression and make you think that you are perfectly aligned, when the reality is that actually you can be quite far off, even though it doesn't look like it just looking out of the window. If you can get yourself within 5 degrees of the runway track, then that is within acceptable limits, and you'll be able to control your aircraft without skidding all over, as you can see us again doing now in the video. Now the video you are watching is actually a replay of a landing that I did on a live stream coming into Copenhagen's runway 30 with a decent crosswind as well. So let's now go ahead, try and do this landing again, but keeping the navigation display in the scan and trying to make a much better job of it. I've set the weather with a decent crosswind just to make it a little bit more challenging, but still within the aircraft limits, of course. Remember, crosswind landing max component for that is 38 knots in the A320. Now, one of the really easy things to help you here is that actually the go-around track shown on the navigation display in blue is also the runway track. Please be aware, however, that not all go-around tracks are the runway track, so don't rely on this to give you the runway track and direction on the navigation display. You're looking for that little green diamond there at the top. But for this runway, you can see that currently it looks good out of the window, but I'm nowhere near the runway track, so I am going to have to use some rudder as we touch down to try and hold that track. Again, you can disregard any of the warnings and master caution lights that you can see. We're purely just concentrating on trying to get the aircraft down nice and safely with the crosswind that we've got coming in to Copenhagen. The autopilot is now disconnected, so I've got control. When you're putting that rudder in the decrab, you can also try and use a little bit of aileron just to keep the wings nice and level. And when you have a good crosswind like this, it's not uncommon for one wheel to touch down before the other one, so that's not a bad thing. Okay, so now I'm just squeezing the rudder a little bit to try and get us within that 5 degrees, and as you can see, we kind of just got blown off the center line a little bit, but we are much closer to that runway track as we touch down, meaning that we can control that much better and stay on the center line as we roll out. A much improved landing on the first one shown in the video. It was by no means perfect, and it could perhaps have done with a little left aileron just as we squeeze that right rudder to get us nice and held onto that center line. But if, like me at the moment, you are just using a side stake with the twist action, that is actually really difficult to accomplish. Much easier if you have rudder pedals set up. Hopefully this video has given you some context into how to try and minimize the risk of skidding off the runway, and shown you that it is very, very easy to do if you are not lined up close to the center line track of the runway. If you do have any questions or even tips for other people to read, then please do leave a comment down below. Thank you so much for watching. Really hope you have found this helpful, and if you have, please don't forget to leave a like. It makes a massive difference to the channel, so a big thank you to those of you who have already gone ahead and done that. And of course, if you are brand new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss future videos and of course our live streams. Thank you so much. I'll see you all again next time. Bye bye for now.